Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final day of Kidney Action Week. We hope you're enjoying the week and connecting with your peers. On behalf of the American Kidney Fund, we're thrilled to have you join this session, What is Hyperkalemia? Treatment and Management. My name is Janelle Gagne, and I'm a clinical dietitian with over 30 years of experience as a renal dietitian working with individuals who have been in all stages of chronic kidney disease and the treatment options. Currently, I serve as a committee member, for the update of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics National Kidney Diet, as well as co-editing their third edition of the Clinical Guide to Nutrition Care and Kidney Disease. I also serve as a medical review committee member for Midwest Kidney Network, a member of the Dietitian Advisory Group for the American Kidney Fund, as well as co-editor of the AAKP Delicious Recipes series for the American Association of Kidney Patients. This week has been full of exciting sessions where we have learned so much from top nephrologists, doctors, dietitians, patients, and caregivers. Hopefully, everyone will be leaving this year's event with new tools and resources to help us all live our healthiest lives. Today's session, our panelists will give an overview of hyperkalemia and information on how it can be managed with nutritional lifestyle changes, as well as medications that are now available to manage this condition, which open up a wider variety of food choices for individuals. Our panelists will also discuss the various resources that the American Kidney Fund has on managing hyperkalemia, including the Kidney Kitchen and our Beyond Bananas campaign. Before we get started, I encourage you all to join the conversation wherever you may be logging in from today. We will have a Q&A at the end of our session, but you don't have to wait until then to submit your questions. Please drop your comments in the window next to or below the Facebook live stream or the chat box to the right if you are joining us on the Kidney Action Week website. We'll try to answer as many of these questions as we can. I also want to take a minute to thank our session sponsor, AstraZeneca. We greatly appreciate their support and partnership with the American Kidney Fund's efforts to educate the public about the topic of hyperkalemia. Now, let me introduce you to our experts for today's session. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of joining Dr. Cam Kalantari-Zada and Nilce Gedney, who will provide their insights on this very important subject. Welcome, everyone. Dr. Cam Kalantari is a triple board certified physician who studied medicine in Germany and received his master's and doctorate degree in epidemiology from the University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health. He also trained at the State University of New York and the University of California, San Francisco, and is board certified in internal medicine, nephrology, and pediatrics. Dr. Kalantari is currently professor and chief of nephrology and hypertension at the University of California, Irvine. He's authored over 600 publications and has had several National Institute of Health grants. He is a member of the International Steering Committee for World Kidney Day and the immediate past president of the International Society of Renal Nutrition and Metabolism. Nilce is current executive director of Home Dialyzers United, or HDU, having been their past treasurer and vice president for over 5 years. She comes to HDU as an 8-year solo home hemodialyzer and 20 years of proactively managing her chronic kidney disease that was due to acute kidney injury. She's active in the Policy and Advocacy Committee and has spoken at numerous events, including the Home Alliance for Dialysis, American Kidney Fund, National Kidney Foundation, Standardized Outcomes in Nephrology, Annual Dialysis Conference, the Kidney Project, Kidney Health Initiative, the American Nephrology Nurses Association, and Kidney Week. She is a contributor at the Kidney Views blog, the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology, and seminars in nephrology as well. Nilce's patient advocacy stems from her experience on Capitol Hill beginning at age 16, where she learned that power in numbers can bring about change. Dr. Kalantari, thank you for being with us today for Kidney Action Week and talking to our audience about hyperkalemia and kidney disease. can you give us a brief overview of hyperkalemia and its connection to kidney disease?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Dania. It's such a great pleasure and honor to present today. American Kidney Fund, AKF, is among the most credible brands. For me as a nephrologist, as a servant of kidney community, it's always a more than honor and pleasure to be here. So thank you, AKF colleagues, for putting together this great program and also for kindly inviting me. Thank you, Ms. Janelle Dania, for kindly introducing me. It's also a great pleasure and honor to be in this program with yourself and with Ms. Nilce Gedney, the amazing leader and patient voice and patient advocate. So let's start here. I don't think the keyword potassium is unknown to anybody, any person who has kidney disease. A person with kidney disease and their care partners, his or her care partner. That means caregiver who is more involved. Care partner is actually more important than caregiver. Is the caregiver who is involved in day-to-day kidney problems of the person and whose life is also affected. So kidney patients and their care partners, they know the keyword potassium is one of the key elements. It's an important element. It's found in foods. And believe it or not, the keyword element means healthy food. So this is the irony. This is the one that we need to acknowledge first, that potassium per se is not a bad thing, is not something to be avoided. Potassium, as we'll talk in the next 20 minutes, you will see that potassium is something that is strongly recommended to be part of your food intake. So your heart needs potassium. You're essentially, this is the name of the game, that a heart healthy diet must have enough potassium. However, we're going to go over this, why potassium is like a two-edged sword and why we need to be careful when we have kidney disease. Let's move on to the next slide. So high potassium level is called hyperkalemia. So now, while potassium is important and potassium intake in the diet is very important, kidneys are there to regulate potassium level in the blood. If potassium level in the blood goes above certain range, and I'm going to ask all my patients to remember the magic number 3.5 to 5.3. I always, when they ask me, Dr. Kalanta, what's the norm? What's a good potassium? I said 3.5 to 5.3. Actually, it's okay to be closer to 5 or 5.3, but above that is not good. So how do I remember that? 3.5 and then reverse of that is 5.3. What's the unit milli equivalents per liter? And we're going to talk about this. If potassium is above 5.3, it's called hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia is something that is to be avoided, prevented and avoided. Why? Because it could cause problems with the heart. At the same time, very low potassium should also be avoided. Some patients who are on peritoneal dialysis, for instance, sometimes half of them have potassium is very low, half of them potassium is normal to high. So as you can see, it's not a black and white story. Let's move on to the next slide and expand on this story, the relationship between high potassium and kidney disease. As I said, kidneys do a lot of things. They not only remove waste materials from our body, they also regulate so many electrolytes in our blood. Among others is potassium. Everything in your blood, almost everything that has a normal range, is because kidney takes care of that. So some person asked me, some of these young doctors, they said, look, what is the normal range of potassium in the urine? I said, the reason there is no normal range of the urine is because kidneys don't have normal range, because kidneys ensure that the blood remains within normal. So if your kidneys doesn't work, and I apologize for the background noise, if the kidneys don't work, then the normal range of potassium is going to be affected. So let's move on to the next slide. so we can expand on these. Now, what happens if potassium is too high? The good potassium, the potassium that we all need and we are recommended to eat, if kidneys suddenly cannot regulate it, then the level goes above 5.3, 5.5, 5.9, 6.07. And then you start feeling, sadly, the symptoms are minimal. If there is usually no symptom, that means no unpleasant feeling at all. If anything, sometimes you may have just a little bit of nausea, vomiting, or a tiny bit of stomach cramps. But most of the time, you as the patient don't even have any symptoms. So that's, and you may say, why is that? Well, guess what? It's not the only thing. Hypertension doesn't have symptoms. Diabetes, most of the time, doesn't have any symptoms while your blood sugar is high. So this is not an exception of problems that do not cause unpleasant symptoms initially until it's too late. So now, if I do a EKG, then I see that something is wrong. I may see that some of the waves are abnormal. Let's go to the next slide. And therefore, potassium should be high potassium should be avoided. So let's go to the next slide. And now, what should we do when potassium is high, or to preemptively avoid high potassium? So traditionally, since we know that potassium comes from food and a lot of healthy food, we say that avoid high potassium foods, right? So why? Because none of us, I don't want to come to a dialysis round and ask where is Miss Jones and Mr. Gonzalez, and they tell me sadly they had a sudden heart attack and they passed away. That really, how much after 22 years of rounding on dialysis patients in the United States and CKD patients, and also prior to that in Germany, it breaks my heart. And that's why we do this heartbreaking job of telling you guys to do certain things strictly, because I want to see you. Seeing you, smiling in front of me is the most precious gift that I have. And each time one of our kidney patient is not there anymore, it really breaks my heart. So potassium could cause, high potassium could cause heart standstill, and sudden death. So let's move on to the next slide and see now what we should do. So not infrequently, your physician tells you what to do to avoid high potassium, right? And there are a list of foods that have high amounts of potassium, and also the list of drinks. When you look at the drink, the good news is that anything you buy, potassium and sodium is listed. And we always say sodium, which is salt, but potassium is also listed. So take a look at potassium, write down and add up the amounts, and see how much per day you are eating potassium or drinking potassium altogether. And the information could help you and could also educate you. And then you can educate your dialysis nurses or your CKD clinic, your transplant nurse. Say, hey, transplant clinic nurse, did you know that each banana on average has 400 milligrams of potassium, 0.4 grams of potassium? Let's move on to the next slide. So, and this is the expansion of how to track your potassium intake and your level. Each time, every month in the dialysis center, we measure your potassium at least once a month, if not more. In the CKD clinic, if you are not on dialysis, you are coming to the CKD clinic, nephrology clinic, or family medicine, we measure your potassium every single time you come, every single time that you have a blood test, and create a log of this. Each time you go to the transplant clinic or post-transplant clinic, your potassium level is part of that. So therefore, it's highly unlikely, even if I measure your tacrolimus in my transplant clinic, I measure your potassium. If I measure your cystatin C and creatinine, I measure your potassium. And I am impressed always with a patient who has created a table of his blood tests, including potassium. He says, doctor, my potassium in the past 6 months has been most of the time below 5.3 and one time 5.5. I said, wow, this is a person who keeps track on potassium levels and creates daily logs. And this person, believe me, doctors take that person very seriously. Let's move on to the next slide. So please impress your doctor. tell their doctor that you're in control, and doctors and nurses, technicians, they all take it seriously. And then your dietitian comes here. Now, our dietitians have this somewhat challenging task of telling you, giving you the list of foods that are, most of them are so healthy and they all have high potassium. And the famous examples that you hear all the time is bananas and avocados, peaches, oranges, nuts, and all those things. And please listen to them. I mean, I say that thank you, Ms. Janelle Garnier. Ms. Janelle Garnier is a nationally renowned dietitian. She has done this all the time, from CKD to dialysis kidney transplant patients. And work with her about potassium restrictions, but always remember that the best is not to go from one extreme to the other extreme. I have patients here who say, doctor, I looked up and I don't even look at banana as if it's going to kill me. Or I said, no, that is not what I, nephrologist, or my dietitians told you. We didn't say don't look at avocado at all. It's a poison. No, we didn't say that. We said that we're going to have a balanced approach, restrictions, and we're working actually together to even remove the keyword restriction to make it balanced approach, because sometimes restriction limitations, dietary restrictions could cause misunderstanding, as I'll also show you. Let's move on to the next slide. So if we team up and here put again the keyword restriction, we still use dietary restrictions of potassium, but there have been also some questions because we're not sure which potassium is absorbed 100% and which food has potassium that's not absorbed 100%, right? So, for instance, if you go right now to CVS and buy no salt, means no sodium, it's actually pure potassium. That's 100% absorbed. That's one of the worst things anybody could do, is to buy. I mean, I shouldn't say that with strong opinion. I apologize, but if anybody says you need more potassium, eat more healthy food. You don't need added salt. I mean, of course, there are also some of my patients that have very low potassium. I have to give them potassium salt, but that's the first thing to do. And if you are going to avoid potassium, restrict potassium, not avoid, restrict, sorry, and even not restrict, balance potassium, then educate yourself, listen to your dietitians, and see what we can do to ensure that adequate potassium, balanced amounts of potassium is ensured. Next one. So now, what is recommended? Now, the Institute of Medicine, it's not called American Academy of Medicine, recommends 4.7 grams. And you may say, wow, what is 4.7 grams? 4.7 grams is equivalent of 12 to 15 bananas. Wow, that's a lot of potassium, right? And you may say that, is this what is my daughter or my son or my brother or my sister recommended? Yes, if they have normal kidney function, they need to eat equivalent of 15 to 20 bananas a day. And that's just the recommended dietary allowance. And most people in the United States don't even reach 3 or 3.5. Why? Because they don't eat 5 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables. But what if I have kidney disease? Now, World Health Organization says 3.5. American Academy of Medicine says, Food and Nutrition Board says 4.7. If you have CKD4 and 5 with potassium sporadically going above 5.3, we recommend less than 3 grams, which is roughly 60-70%. It's not even half of that. That means you still look at the target, which is a lot of potassium, and go slightly below that. And for hemodialysis patients, sometimes those dialysis patients whose potassium is very high, like coming back with 6 or 7, I say that, hey, just the day before dialysis, lower your potassium intake. After dialysis, usually your potassium is low. Before dialysis, your potassium is high. So just come up with a balanced approach. And PD patients also the same. So, and come up with a way of these grams. Each gram of potassium is roughly 25 millimoles, because sometimes potassium is millimoles, but you know already 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. And most of the time when you pick up a can, it's in milligrams. Let's move on to the next slide. So look at the milligrams and remove the 3 digits, becomes grams. And as you can see here, most of the time, if you have earlier CKD and your potassium is not high, you should also target recommended dietary allowance potassium, which is 4.7. If you're on transition into dialysis or you're delaying dialysis with the new models of care, it's called value-based models, there's going to be delaying transition to dialysis starting this year already, then we need to make sure your potassium is not high. Why? Because high potassium sometimes is the reason to start dialysis. For patients who are in incremental dialysis, twice weekly hemodialysis, we have a lot of them in our center. I tell them if you want to continue only twice a week dialysis or less peritoneal dialysis or less home dialysis, that at home, instead of having 5 next stage, having 3, then you need to control your potassium. So these are things that are not black and white. It's not for everybody. Every single person is different. The same way that Nilce is different than Don, than other persons. So every single person needs to find his or her own approach to potassium management. Next one. So now, people say that, doctor, you give me all this restriction. Is there anything left for me to eat? And I said, my patient, you're right. I am embarrassed. I apologize. I should really help you with my dietitians to give you the list of things that you can eat and enjoy instead of giving you only restrictions. Let's move on to the next slide. So how can we work together? So look at the food, again, numbers. For example, one big banana has 350, 450 milligrams of potassium. So if you're, and when we say per food item, just remember servings, you may end up having 20 to 35 servings a day. Let's say 30 to 40 servings a day of different things. And dietitians like Ms. Ghani are going to tell you there is a exchange list if you go to all those diet stores. So you need to be cognizant, and you can choose one item, high potassium, and then the next item should be low potassium. And you be your dietitian and physicians and add up and combine these things. Next slide. So you are in control. A good patient, an empowered patient is the one who tells us he or she has done this. And Nilce, for example, is an example because she has everything under her control and she's in control. And she knows the list of high potassium. She's not going to say that, hey, I can't even look at them. She says that, hey, I'm looking at them in a balanced approach. Some days I enjoy them carefully. Some days I enjoy them less. And I'm going to be careful if in the morning I have a little bit of this amazing food like avocado and bananas. In the afternoon, I'm going to be a little more careful. So let's move on to the next one. For example, even tomato is not, there is nothing here that is forbidden. We don't have forbidden food. Everything is allowed in a balanced format. So this is just to highlight that when we say 2 grams of potassium, 2 grams is the most restricted one. It's equivalent of 50 milliequivalents or millimole. 3 grams is 75 because each gram of potassium has 25, each gram is 25. 1 gram, 25, 1 gram is 25 millimoles or milliequivalents. And remember that National Institute of Medicine recommends 4.7 grams. That's for healthy people. In fact, even higher. Let's move on to the next one. So, and then we talked about low potassium diet. We talked about high potassium. If you can find food items that have less than 100 milligrams per item, then you can enjoy 30 to 40 of those food items a day, right? Now, you may say that, hey, doctor, in the afternoon, I have a boiled potato that doesn't even have 100 milligrams of potassium. Can I have at the same time with half of avocado, which has 200 milligrams of potassium? I say, yes, because you're now adding up, you're balancing a moderate high potassium with a moderately low potassium. Let's move on to the next slide. So you guys do these things correctly. That means look at the list of foods with low potassium, look at the list of foods with high potassium, look at here, for example, and combine them. Remember that it's the world is not potassium. Everything else is important. Healthy fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a revolution, a healthy food revolution of kidney care out there since 2-3 years ago. Colleagues such as great dietitians and great physicians such as great dietitians and physicians such as Dr. Joshi are pushing for more fresh fruits and vegetables and more plant-based diet. So let's move on to the next slide and see, since I have a few more minutes left, what else can we do? Just remember that potassium is not just from the food. Potassium could also go up for other reasons. So don't blame yourself. Don't say, oh my God, my potassium is 5.6 and I again, it's because I ate half an avocado yesterday. No. What if it's high because of the medication I give you? So you blame me, please, me, nephrologist. Don't ever feel guilty about this. And don't allow anybody to say that, hey, you, again, didn't listen to me. Always take the benefit of the doubt that you're doing it correctly and your potassium is high for all other reasons. And the same way that there are medications that could cause high potassium, there are also medications that could extract potassium. They have been around now for a number of years. Actually, one of them has been around for 50 years. It's called K-Exolate. And then there are several new ones, potassium binders. And these potassium binders, we are hoping that should give us more flexibility. Let's move on to the next slide. More freedom so we can enjoy healthy food while potassium binders are there to help us to better regulate a balanced approach to heart-healthy diet. Let's move on to the next slide. And you may say that, doctor, now that you blame yourself, what are medications that you have given me that has caused high potassium? I give a lot of my patients something called ACE inhibitors or RAS inhibitors, and they include ARBs. You may have heard lisinopril, losartan. I'm sorry that I'm mentioning generic names. And I'm not related to any of these two companies. I'm just saying that, hey, I give those things because those medications, I'm hoping that they protect your kidneys and heart in long term, as well as your transplanted kidneys. Non-steroidal, such as a lot of Advil, ibuprofen, that could cause high potassium. But if you need that, if you have joint pain, I have to work with you. Or beta blockers for your blood pressure, low pressure, metoprolol. You have heard it. I give some of my transplant patients the first 6 months or sometimes all the time Bactrim. That's trimethoprim. Digoxin for heart, and in the emergency room or the good old tacrolimus and Prograf and cyclosporine. So just be careful. And also, if somebody's giving you potassium pills while your potassium is high, that's something that you immediately need to talk with the doctor and dietitian. Because sometimes I may have given you potassium pills last year, the year before, but this year I have to stop it. And I'm busy with 200 other patients and I forget. And you should never assume that the doctor knows everything. You need to bring the list of your medication to the doctor and say, hey, this is my new list. And the nurse, the technician in your office didn't reconcile my medications. Bad job, doctor. You tell me, doctor, you did a bad job. This is not my current medications, and I'm still taking potassium pills. And I say, oh my God, thank you. What a great patient. I'm going to stop it. Right? So next, move on to the next. So always be in control. So now, in summary, I want to now spend 2 minutes in this summary because it's very important. Manage potassium through diet and medication. So don't ever feel that diet is the only way to manage potassium. It is not correct because a lot of hyperkalemia happens because of medications that we, family physicians, internists, pediatricians, and nephrologists are giving you. So please know that and let your doctor also be cognizant of this. Let your dietitians know about this. And diet should not be sacrificed for controlling potassium, but diet is yet another tool to help potassium management in a balanced format. And do not sacrifice your heart-healthy diet, fresh fruits and vegetables for the sake of potassium, because the same way that your kidneys are important, your heart is important too. I want to see you for 20 more years, 30 more years, 50 more years. I want you guys. We recently celebrated 100th birthday of one of our dialysis patients. He turned 100, 6 years, started 6 years ago on dialysis. And this is what I would like to see. I would like to see more 100 birthdays in our CKD clinics, in our transplant clinics. One of my patients was on dialysis for 41 years. And I would like those stories. I become emotional. I cry when I see somebody has been doing so well. I want you guys to tell my children, if any of them become a doctor in the future, say, hey, your late father was a good doctor. So these are stories that I want to see. Take potassium binders as prescribed. When we start now with giving more and more potassium binders, please take them, because there is a reason that we do this to you. So just use them correctly and talk to your physicians about medications that could have caused hyperkalemia. While you should respect doctors, including myself, I really like that when a patient is respectful. You should also question and say, doctor, is it possible that potassium is high because of all the combination of all these 5 medications you're giving me? You're giving me tacrolimus for my kidney transplant, and you're giving me also lisinopril, you're also giving me metoprolol. All 3 of them, Dr. Kallentar showed in the list that all of them increase potassium level. So maybe my friend, and then on top of that, you also gave me Bactrim for my urinary tract infection, or for first 6 months of transplant, or for my dialysis problem. So yes, so there's, okay, sorry, I missed it. So I'm going to adjust some of these medications. Talk to your doctor about all these medications, and work with your doctor, work with your dietitians to create a potassium management plan that is balanced and doable and consistent in 2022, and which allows you to enjoy life. Remember, the World Kidney Day theme of last year was living well with kidney disease. Kidney disease is there for you to live well and to inspire us with great stories. And I think this was my last slide. Am I correct? Actually, I think now there are resources for you. So please, we are very fortunate. American Kidney Funds and colleagues from AKF are here to partner with us. They partner with industry, and through the industry and other stakeholders, we do have a balanced approach to all of this. And I think next slide shows where to go to click on evaluations, right? This is the next slide. Go to the next slide. Let me see what it is. But if we are done here, we're done. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kallentar, for that insightful explanation of hyperkalemia. If you're just now joining us, thank you for being here and being part of our Kidney Action Week. You're tuned into this session, What is Hyperkalemia? Treatment and Management. We will have a Q&A at the end of our time today, but you don't have to wait to ask your questions. Drop your comments in the window next to or below the Facebook live stream or the chat box to the right if you have joined us on Kidney Action Week website. Again, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Now we'll move to Nilcha. Nilcha, would you mind sharing your story with us? Can you please share how you, awesome. Can you share with us how you managed your potassium level as your kidney function declined and you started utilizing what we call short daily hemodialysis?
That's right. So first, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be here this week. I've been hanging out all week listening to some of these great sessions. And if you missed any, go back and watch them, online, because they've all been fantastic. So with that being said, I found out that I had CKD, more than 30 years ago in the 90s. And I managed it really well. And I even remember back in the beginning when I just was CKD, how hard it was. I was given lists of don't eat this, don't eat that, potassium foods, phosphorus foods, and it was overwhelming. And what it boiled down to me in my mind, the first generation, was, well, it looks like I can eat white rice and white bread. And obviously that's not satisfying. So fast forward 20 some years and I start dialysis. And thanks to Dr. Kallentar, I was able to start on a fairly limited regimen because I still had residual function. And that's just been such a blessing for me. It's given me a more liberal diet, better clearances for my dialysis. But so short daily has really worked well. It's kept my levels, I call it a balancing act, with phosphorus, potassium, and so forth. But what I have noticed over the years, 9 years now, is that nothing with dialysis stays the same. So while you can go into dialysis with high potassium and it becomes controlled and your dialysis is doing really well, and especially with short daily, you often have more liberal diet because you're taking off everything almost on a daily basis. So you don't have those gaps that you have to cover for as you would on a 3-day-a-week schedule in clinic. So that's really helpful. If you're doing home dialysis, you tend to have more flexibility in your diet. And this actually became very clear to me early on. Well, actually, not so early on. I had great labs for 6 years, and now all of a sudden, for some strange reason, my treatments were leaving me completely wiped out. I mean, like almost feeling like I was going to pass out. And I just couldn't figure it out until I started looking at my labs and I realized that my potassium, for whatever reason, had started to drop really low. So while there are a lot of dangers with high potassium, you can also have just as many with super low potassium. When I discovered that, I talked to my clinicians. We changed the dialysate, and everything more or less normalized again. And I've now been doing that treatment for the next couple of years. Who knows what can happen in the future? But the really exciting thing was, I think, or like a turning point for me, I've always tried to eat natural foods. And you know, we all have different ideas of diet and things like that. When COVID hit, we're all at home, and all of a sudden, you know, you don't want to go to the grocery store, and they started having online grocery orders, and I was able to start really focusing on my diet, and even more than I had previously. And the benefits were amazing. So a couple simple tips I'm going to share with you is, and this was told to me early on, when you go shopping, if you physically go in a store, only go on the outside aisles. You go in on the vegetable side, fruits and vegetables, you go down the back, which has the meats, you go up the dairy aisle, and you go out. All of the aisles in between, the 90% of the foods in there are going to be loaded with potassium and phosphorus. So you have to learn to read labels, and that's really hard because unfortunately, we don't require the potassium and phosphorus be listed. But we do have a secret tool here, and it's on the AKF website, and I've used it for years, and that is the USDA database. It recently changed its name, but I know we have it here. And maybe we can pop it up in the resources section. You can go to that database and look up pretty much anything that exists in the food world and get a fairly accurate potassium and phosphorus, sodium, all the different levels for foods. And so when I had an issue, in my case, it was phosphorus, and I knew I was not eating a lot of phosphorus foods, I kept a food diary for 2 weeks. It wasn't that hard. I wrote down everything I ate. I checked the database. I was very liberal in giving myself points. And I wasn't even coming close to my daily requirement. So I could go back to my clinicians and say, I don't think this is a diet issue. Just as Dr. Kalantar said earlier, you know, we tend to internalize everything, and it's not our fault. There are so many other environmental factors that can affect these levels, from literally what is occurring in your tap water, your drinking water, when you shower. You know, just minor changes if you have a well can change the makeup and affect your levels. So we have to learn not to keep blaming ourselves, but to, I always say, we have to be our own best detectives. So we really have to look outside the box and try to understand what we are reacting to. And so with the tools that we have, I enjoy pretty much a normal diet all the time. I don't restrict myself on very many things. Fortunately, I'm not a fan of bananas, so that's never been an issue for me. But I love good tomatoes. So, you know, I can balance that and make sure that I get what I need without going over the average limits that of what I need. So with that, I'm going to Any other questions?
That you were talking about was the Food Data Central.
Thank you. I should have.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great resource, and I have used it for years. And it's really handy. And then learning to read the labels, because anything with both potassium and phosphorus comes disguised. You may, it won't just say potassium. It might have potassium chloride or sodium potassium or you name it. But if it has a potassium and or a PHOS somewhere in that ingredient, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be high in unnatural forms of chemicals preservatives that they use in the foods. And this is what most of us, our bodies really react to. Eating potassium in nature, like with nuts and dairy and limited and all of the other areas, that type of potassium, as Dr. Kalendar said earlier, our bodies are used to that, and they will absorb it in a different way. So you really, 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 again, go back to that visual of going around the outside of the supermarket and not down the aisles. The processed cereals, the processed crackers, all of these things. Look at the ingredients. You're going to see that they have different types of potassium, different types of phosphorus, and those ingredients that are not in nature are the ones that are particularly hard for people with kidney issues to digest. And that's going to impact, in most cases, your lab values way, way more than eating a banana or a tomato or a potato.
Absolutely. That's a very good point to bring up. And the other thing, not only the balance aspect of things, but we do know, as Dr. Kallentar had said, we need potassium too. So we can't get overly zealous about lowering it too much. So that balance that you talked about, adding things up, having your tools to do that, such as Food Data Central, that's awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. That was incredibly insightful for all of us. So now we'll open up for questions. Once again, we'll be answering your questions, so feel free to type questions and comments into the window next to your Facebook live video stream or the chat box to the right if you're joining us on Kidney Action Week website, and we'll answer as many as possible. And the first question that I have is for you, Dr. Kallentar. The question is lisinopril safe for me to take if my potassium is in normal range?
Yeah, the answer is that if this comes from your doctor, it's safe. Your doctor wouldn't give you something that's not safe. Now, you may say that, hey, you just said potassium could increase lisinopril could increase the level of potassium. Yes, but this is a calculated risk. That means we nephrologists and other specialists, your cardiologists, we know that's going to happen. But we have put all these things together, risk and benefits. So again, if your doctor is doing this, do this. But remember to also continue with the monitoring, because probably your doctor would like to know how your potassium level is once every month or periodically. And then it's all well regulated.
Thank you, Dr. Kallentar. I have a question for you, Nilcha. You often speak about the importance of being your own advocate. Can you tell us more about the types of advice you have provided to other patients experiencing potassium difficulty with their kidney disease?
So actually, I'll jump back to what I said earlier. We have to be our own detectives, because it's really hard to understand what is happening to our bodies as we go through dialysis. I like to say that, on any given day, a dialysis treatment, it will change. They're not consistent. They're not the same. They're not cookie cutters. And it makes it really hard to achieve that balance. So while one day your labs are perfect, the next month it's off. And the key thing there is to either keep logs. What I try to do with labs is note where I get them back and I evaluate them and I go, okay, I felt really good this month. So this is where my labs are. So that might be a baseline that I'm looking for. And then a couple of months down the road, all of a sudden my potassium or my phosphorus flare up. And I think, well, what is it? this is a little bit of an aside, but this is how important it is to look at everything. I live in a rural area. It's very agricultural. And twice a year, the farmers go out and they fertilize their fields. And all of the water that we consume comes from the runoff from the fields into the tributaries, and it's processed, and we drink that. So I asked my nurse, every fall and every spring, my phosphorus automatically jumps because what is fertilizer? It's phosphorus. So, I mean, totally outside the box. But I asked her, my nurse one time, I said, do you notice a peak when at this time of year with your other patients? And she said, come to think of it, I do. And I told her my theory that I said twice a year, the runoff from all the fertilizer in this agricultural region goes into our water system. It's not regulated by the EPA. I mean, it's just one example of how you can sort of drill down to get to the root of answer. If you can't, if something is bugging you, you try to figure out what it is. It could be something that you react to that nobody else does. So you just want to be very in tune with your body, what you're eating, following your labs, understanding when you feel good, questioning when you don't, saying, well, what does this lab mean? Why is it off? And, so forth. And all of this communication should always be, as part of the team. So you get the answers and you can help understand where you're at any given point in your treatment.
Excellent. So Dr. Kallentar, I have a question for you. When we talk about treatment for hyperkalemia, you talked about diet as being an option, medications such as potassium binders can be helpful. And we're curious, what factors affect your choice of treatment for hyperkalemia?
Yes.
Or how do you decide on which treatment option?
Yeah, the answer is that all of the above. Okay. A good approach to medicine and to your health is the so-called multimodal integrated approach. Integrated approach means that if you believe that there is a medication that is magic bullet, that doesn't exist in my opinion. And if you believe that there is a diet that takes care of it without medication, that also doesn't exist. Combination of medicine and lifestyle, this is what has been recommended by the high level academicians and authorities in this country as well as everywhere else. So if and this is how I would like to encourage all of us to also inspire each other and educate each other that diet per se cannot be used for potassium control and cannot be blamed for high potassium or very low potassium. Same way, medication alone, if you say that, oh, this phosphorus binder doesn't work well, or as Nilche's example, because she also talked about phosphorus. Same way with potassium. This potassium binder works or doesn't work. Just work together, combination of diet and medications, both of them together, and don't go to excessive, extreme sides of the spectrum for one versus the other. Don't say that, hey, I'm going to stop this medication because it doesn't work, or I'm going to only take several potassium binders a day beyond even what your doctor has recommended or has prescribed, and combine diet and the medication therapy, and that usually should work, plus all other things that Neil just said. The life, I mean, we are here. Just remember, some of great patients who have taught me, they said that, hey, dialyze to live, or kidney transplant to live. Don't live to have dialysis or to have kidney transplantation, right? So balance approach between medicine and diet.
Awesome. And we have another question for you, Dr. Kallentar. What are the risk factors for developing hyperkalemia? If you could please remind us.
Certain kidney disease, sadly, most kidney diseases. That means as kidney disease, chronic kidney disease progresses towards stage 4 and 5, and sometimes even stage 1, if you have diabetes, and if I give you even touch of lisinopril, very low dose, and suddenly potassium goes up, that's from diabetes. If you don't have diabetes, if your kidney disease is from certain other things, let's say polycystic kidneys, actually that's where potassium sometimes in some of my polycystic kidney disease patients is even low. So it's not that having kidney disease is always associated with high potassium, but kidney disease certainly is the main risk factor for hyperkalemia. Remember, hyperkalemia is high potassium. The second one is or are medications, as we discussed. You remember that one of my slides was the list of medications that cause potassium going up. And sadly, even a medication that is supposed to protect your kidneys and heart causes hyperkalemia, that should remind you of also good food items, like fresh fruits and vegetables, citrus fruits, tomato, Jedney's favorite vegetable, tomato. So the same way that you take lisinopril, you don't say, I can't even touch lisinopril because it causes hyperkalemia. The same way also you should not sacrifice this food. So the third one, therefore, is food. But even the food, as you said, I said the third risk factor. I'm not even sure there are uncertainties about the impact of food on hyperkalemia, but we still put it among the three top risk factors. That means, again, having CKD, certain types of CKD and certain levels of CKD, not all of them. Remember, some of my patients, they said that, doctor, since you told me I have CKD, I looked up and I stopped everything that has potassium. I said, first of all, that's very wrong. You should not have looked up these things. I mean, I told you, listen to me, not go to internet, right? The second one is that actually your CKD type doesn't even have hyperkalemia. It has, if anything, is normal to low. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it looks like we have one final question that I think I will take because it's very specific to nutrition. And the question is, how do you convert the percent value on the label to milligrams? So in the nutrition facts label, when you do find potassium listed, it will give you a percent of the daily value that is typically recommended. And as Dr. Kalantar mentioned, that recommendation for the general population is 4,700 milligrams per day. So that's what they base that percentage on. So the example that I would give is if something has 3% of the daily value, that is approximately 150 milligrams of potassium in that serving. And so as Dr. Kalantar outlined, and you'll see on the American Kidney Fund website, that any food that is 150 milligrams or less is considered a low potassium food. So once again, that percentage, whatever it may be, 2%, 10%, 20%, it's always a percentage of 4,700 milligrams because that's what's recommended for the general population. All righty. So great questions, everyone. Thank you for joining us and participating today. We are now going to pull up a key takeaway slide that you can reference for some of the major points that were made from today's session. And I would like to step back, though, and ask Dr. Kalantar to give us 2 quick takeaways that you think should be priorities for individuals who are listening to today's session.
Yeah, I think number one is continue with a balanced approach to life and to disease management. And please don't go from one extreme to the other extreme. Always remember the keyword balance. And the second one is work with your healthcare providers that include physicians, dietitians, and others, and nurses, to ensure that the teamwork works and you are the head of the teamwork.
Awesome. Nilcha, can you give us a couple of quick tips?
Stress, the most important thing is to always advocate for yourself. Say what you mean what you say, communicate with your team, use their resources. But as Dr. Kalantar said, we're at the head of the board table and everyone else is around the boardroom, and we all work together to achieve the best possible outcomes while we are managing our dialysis. And we definitely don't let our dialysis manage us.
Awesome. Love those tips. So a huge thank you to our panelists and for all of you who enjoyed us today. There's so much to talk about, as we all know, about kidney disease, and we can't wait to bring you more sessions in the future. So if you haven't already, follow us on Facebook or send us your email through kidneyfund.org, and you'll be the first to know about other resources and sessions like this. Also, if you would like more information on how to manage your potassium level through your nutrition, hop onto the Kidney Kitchen at kitchen.kidneyfund.org, and you'll be able to browse many kidney-friendly recipes. And there are hundreds of them. So I would encourage you to curl up with your laptop and do that sometime. And the nice thing about the Kidney Kitchen is it has an awesome search engine. So, for example, if you have been advised to follow a lower potassium diet, you can search for all the lowest potassium recipes, and they'll just all pop up there for you. So I would encourage you to do that. And also, you will find many resources there that are part of what we call Beyond Bananas series. You'll find things like reading the food label and potassium, which addresses the question that we just talked about. It also has a super food guide, which is a little bit more user-friendly than the Food Data Central, in that you can print off several pages and just flip through them quickly to find out what the potassium content is of common foods. And the nice thing about the potassium food guide too is it comes in both English and Spanish. And you will also see the food tracker, which allows you to track all your foods as far as the potassium content and whether you should be taking your potassium binder or not. So just to summarize from my behalf, as our panelists shared today, it's important for you to know your numbers and work closely with your kidney dietitian to make sure that you are selecting very healthful foods for yourself, but also retain the joy of eating, because that is so very important. And that way you can live well with kidney disease. Once we conclude this session, you will see a link for a quick survey in green below the video screen. Please take a few minutes to tell us how we did today so that we can use this to plan future events. We hope to see you at our next and last session titled Patient Panel, One Disease, Many Journeys. It will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Time or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye now.